In recent years, there's been considerable interest in the use of market segmentation to inform sales and marketing strategies in many industries, including ours, the fitness industry. Market segmentation is a method of grouping customers together based on shared characteristics, such as age, income, location, purchasing patterns, etc. Dividing customers in this way allows for targeted marketing strategies to be developed, and this helps us attract certain groups to our products rather than just having a blanket marketing strategy for all consumers. One such scheme is the Sports England classification. The SEC divides all of the residential postcodes in England into 19 groups referred to as segments. We will look at this in more detail later on. The SEC is designed to help us understand the nation's attitude to sporting and physical activity and the motivations for doing it, or conversely not doing it. The aim is to use the knowledge of this classification to generate targeted initiatives to help persuade more people to take part in physical activity. But despite the wide use in the fitness industry of this system to generate sales, nobody has really examined whether or not the SEC can inform membership retention. In this report, we will look at who the dominant segments are in the fitness industry and whether these segments have higher or lower retention rates than the less common segments. In other words, we ask, are the segments we sell the most to also the most likely to cancel early? So before we move on, I just want to look at the data preparation for this report. It represents over 78,000 members from a broad cross-section of 48 clubs, all with join dates between 2009 and 2011. Based on each member's postcode, members are classified into one of the 19 Sport England segments. So this table shows the names of the 19 market segments along with the descriptions of those segments. The segment names are the most common names for the proportion of the population sharing the characteristics within that segment. For example, the most common name for people described as competitive male urbanities is Ben. So this chart shows the proportion of members in each of the 19 segments within our dataset of 78,000 members. We can see the most dominant market segments are Philip and Tim, accounting for over 14% and 12% respectively. Shortly behind those we have Roger and Joy and Elsie and Arnold's. But if we look at the far right of the chart, our least dominant segments in our database are Norma's and Frank's, with 1% and less than 1% of our membership base. So we look at who these people are. So our top 4 segments are Phillips, so making 14% of our membership base, our comfortable midlife males, Tim, our settling down males, Roger and Joy, our early retirement couples, Elsie and Arnold, our retirement home singles, all making a significant chunk of the total of our membership base. Right at the bottom of the 19 and 18 and 19, Frank, our twilight years gents, and Norma, as I said, 1% and less of our total membership base when you look at the 78,000 members included in the data range. So this chart shows the segments along with their unique attrition rates, i.e. the number of cancellations per 1,000 members per month. The segments are ranked in descending order of attrition. We can clearly see here So we can clearly see our two most dominant segments in terms of percentage of membership base have very different attrition rates. For example, we lose far more Tims than we would lose Philips. Equally, we looked at Norma and Frank, who made up a very small proportion of our membership base, but they also have some of the lowest attrition rates of anybody within our membership systems. So this time we look at median length of stay, our average length of stay. And by length of stay, we mean at what point are 50% of our members still with us and what point at 50% left. So for each of these segments, we look at their median length of stay and again rank them in descending order. So the pink bars are showing their length of stay, the grey bars are showing how much of our membership base each of these segments make up. So it can be seen that the segments with the longest duration of membership, up at the end of Philip and Frank, stay on average 5.5 months longer than our lower end of the scale here down at Chloe and Ben. So in other words, we get 5.5 extra months membership from the people at the top end with these higher median lengths of stay compared to these at the lower end. So ideally we would like the segment with the longest membership life to make up the majority of our membership in order to maximise our yield per member and our return on investment from a sales perspective. There is some evidence of this with Philip and Roger and Joy making up nearly a quarter of our membership, and also seeing some very higher levels of length of stay. Arguably the most costly, in terms of revenue at least, membership segment is with Tim. So Tims make up 12% of the membership, but have an attrition rate that is 12% higher than all of the other segments combined. Further, Tims stay an average of 4 months less per member compared to the membership segments that stay the longest, so 9 months versus 13 months. So Tims account for approximately 10% of all our cancellations. So when we look at this slide, we now start to bring in our length of stay and our attrition, comparing to our percentage of membership. We can see within our top 5 have very high rates of attrition and one of the lowest lengths of stay. However, when we look down at the bottom in terms of our ranking for numbers of people within our membership base, Frank and Norma have one of the lowest attrition rates but the highest lengths of stay. But we're not maximising on this because there's such a low percentage of people that make up our membership base. So to examine the retention rates between segments, the total number of segments have been reduced to those that make up at least 4% of the database of members. So anything less than 4% have been grouped together and referred to as other. So this slide is looking at the retention rates for the smaller set of segments over the 2 years of follow-up. So before I move on, just for those of you who may be less familiar with how we measure retention, this is something we call a survival curve. So what we do is take a sample of members and assign them all to have started at point 0. So their join date would be point 0, and then we track what happens to each of those people over the course of the coming months. So these months are 1-2 months of membership rather than January, February. So we can look at this compared to any criteria. So here we're looking at the impact of these different segments in terms of their length of stay. So if nobody cancelled, died, moved away, we would expect that line to be 100%, so everybody stays forever. Our retention rate is 100%. We know in reality that doesn't happen. However, anything that can push that curve towards that horizontal and higher to that top right is beneficial for us as operators, because anything under the line is gained members, gained income. Anything above the line is lost members and lost income. So it can be seen by the shape of the retention curve. It's pretty much the same for all segments, indicating that when people cancel is very similar. So we look at a high rate of dropout in that first couple of months of membership, and then again at point 12. This usually refers to the end of contracts. However, the proportion varies by segment. The two segments with the highest 12-month retention rate are Roger and Joy and Philip. These groups have 12-month retention rates of 54% and 52% respectively, i.e. at 12 months, 54% of Rogers and Joys are still with you and 52% of Philips are still with you. However, when we look at Ben and Paula, they have the lowest rates, with their 12-month retention rates being at 39% and 41% respectively. So we can see the difference between the lines is significant. The difference between the lines is lost members and it's lost income for the business. Tims, who make up a reasonable proportion of the membership, at 12% of our entire membership base, have a retention rate of 42%. Therefore, Tims statistically are 22% less likely to still be a member at 12 months compared to Roger and Joy. So let's look at saving members and saving money. As we previously discussed, approximately 10% of cancellations can be attributed to Tims. So if we eradicate Tims from our membership base, then around 2.5% of all membership cancellations over 2 years could be avoided. So the best scenario, theoretically at least, would be for all members to be Rogers and Joys. If this was true, in the members in this study, if we converted everybody to Roger and Joy, then approximately 12.5% of membership cancellations would be avoided. So in this graph here, we show the comparison of the estimated income over 2 years, comparing if we had 100 Rogers and Joys to 1,000 Roger and Joys to 1,000 Tims, both paying £35 per month. The monetary values represent the cumulative income for 6, 12 and 24 months of membership, based on the retention rate for each of those segments. Over 24 months of membership, the 1,000 Roger and Joys would yield an additional £60,000 income, more than the 1,000 Tims. This is an increase of 17% income between the two groups. This is linked to some previous research we've already done, and another example of looking at segmentations within the population. This is another retention curve, our survival curve, and this time based on age. And every time we run this report, which we do for hundreds of operators, we see a very, very similar pattern. So we know that our younger age groups have a much lower length of stay. In this example here, a typical example, we're looking at 16 to 24-year-olds having a median length of stay of 8.5 months, compared to our 45 plus, who have a median length of stay for 18 months and longer. So in summary, the data presented here show that the Sports England segments do actually discriminate members according to both their attrition and retention rates, and therefore market segmentation represents accurate and valid piece of information about members when it comes to membership retention. The results suggest that some of the market segments that are common in health clubs are also the ones with high retention rates and therefore higher income yields. However, some of the groups that are common, particularly the Tims, have lower rates of retention than the average. Exchanging Tims for more Philips or Roger and Joys would increase membership retention, and therefore we could look at increasing higher income yields. So if we increase our income without actually needing to change the total number of members. So So doing this would also reduce the demand on new sales, as a turnover of the members would be reduced. So we are less sales focused, and we're looking at attracting high yield members with higher lengths of stay and therefore higher return on investment. So while no potential sales would ever be turned away, a marketing strategy that targeted more Roger and Joys would be expected to increase the number of Roger and Joys who were potential sales. Philips and Roger and Joys represent some of the larger segments of the general population as well, so this means the pool of potential sales is also large too. So it's about shifting our percentages. Small shifts in how our membership base is made up can make large shifts in our bottom line income. For any assistance in encoding and analysing your data to determine the optimal demographics to sell to based on maximising retention and membership income yield, please do get in touch with us at any point. In terms of moving forwards, we want to look at identifying your Rogers and Joys, your Philips and your Rogers and Joys, to make sure that we can create a targeted marketing approach. For more information on the full report and the research study completed by Dr. Melvin Hilsden, please do visit the Retention People website. On there you'll also find previous research studies that we've completed. Also, if you have any additional questions or need any additional retention support, please do get in touch with us. If you want to identify, as I said, your optimal demographics based on retention, or for more information on Sports England segment classifications, again, please get in touch with us, or I have added the link here. If you want to take that down or you'd like us to send that on, for more information about those Sports England classifications, you can find that via the link here, or as I say, get in touch and we'll happily send that on. Generally, industry marketing agencies do know the Sports England segmentation, and so can also help target your market to those members you wish to attract. But if you'd like us to add additional support on this, as I said, please do get in touch. My contact details and my colleagues Emma are here for you. Otherwise, feel free to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, join our Health and Fitness Retention Forum on LinkedIn, or as I said, visit the website. So that is the end of the today's webinar.